Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We may have some other people logging on. For those of you, I think I probably know many of you on this call. My name is John Elsesser. I'm Executive Director here at INPEA. Appreciate you taking time to be a part of this third-party provider showcase, which we're doing today. I'm being joined by Heidi Gant, my colleague here in the office, who's going to kind of keep us straight on Zoom and monitor the chat for us as well. I think a little shout out to Andrew Mazer, who's our state ombudsman. I think he was going to be joining us as well, and he'll be much more involved in this EANS as time goes on with the process. My guess is that most of the people on this webinar today are Zoom pros by now. I think everybody has pretty much mastered Zoom, whether you like to or not. But just in case, we're asking everyone to keep your microphones muted. We have, I think, over 160 folks who've registered for the showcase today. And so it's a little hard to manage that otherwise. And we're also asking folks to keep your cameras off as well. That way it cuts down on the clutter on the screen. We do encourage you to use the chat function, and our speakers and Heidi's going to help us try to monitor that chat. If we don't get to answer all of your questions during our hour and 20 minutes today, we will be recording this and recording the chat as well, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing is, it was great a couple weeks ago to share some good news with folks. We learned that in the second COVID emergency relief package, that the bill had allocated a set aside in the governor's GEARS 2.0 funding for non-public schools. And as you all know by now, it's being referred to as EANS, or the Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools. In Indiana, that amounts to a little bit more than $81 million. I'm guessing that's why we have such a great turnout for the showcase today. We've been working very closely here at INPEA with the Department of Ed on the rollout of this program, and they've been really great to work with, keeping me informed of the process and taking our input in terms of ways that we think this would work most effectively for the students enrolled in non-public schools. The preliminary allocations were released last week, and we're hoping to see the actual school applications released very soon. Don't have a date on that yet. Hopefully we'll have that sooner rather than later. You know, when the allocations were released, and I think everybody knows by now, the allocations were based on enrollment with a weighting for poverty. But we knew when we saw the amounts that we needed to do whatever we could to help schools strategically plan for the allowable uses of these funds. And since one key focus of the 12 is addressing learning loss, we thought it was important that schools understood the use of third-party providers, hence this showcase. And really, today is not intended to be all things EANS. We've had one webinar already, and there will be others afterwards. I'm sure we'll venture into a little bit of other things, but we're really intending today to focus on the third-party provider option as a way to partner with your schools on your EANS funds. So here's how the showcase is going to go. I've asked Michelle Doyle, a very good friend of mine and a national expert on federal funds and federal programs, to kick things off with an introduction on how to use, on the use of third-party providers, as well as to provide some pointers on the strategic use of funds in general. Michelle is the guru on all things dealing with feds and education, so we're really pleased that she was able to join us. And after Michelle, there'll be three of our business partners who have experience in the third-party provider arena to share how they could strategically partner with schools on implementing initiatives through the use of your EANS funds. And that will be FACTS Educational Solutions, Catapult Learning, and Crossroads Education. And just a disclaimer, I want to be very clear that these are by no means the only third-party providers out there. They are simply ones that INPEA has a relationship with, and that we know that they're doing work here in the state of Indiana. So each of those partners will have 15 minutes to present to you, and then there'll be 5 minutes for Q&A through the use of the chat function. We're going to try to keep this as best as we can and stick to a pretty tight timeline. Our intent is the whole thing would be an hour and 20 minutes. I've encouraged our partners to have a way for you to follow up with them if you'd like to learn more about what they can provide or how you can partner with them. So that's kind of giving you the lay of the land. So speaking of timelines, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to turn things over to my good friend, Michelle Doyle.
John. And it was nice to see several names, sometimes faces, as you first came on, that I know from not only Indiana, but around. But I know that a lot of people have not met me. So I thought I would just do a really quick introduction as to who I am, other than John's friend. I have a consulting company. I'm the CEO of Michelle Doyle Educational Consulting. And Heidi, if you could just move the slide forward, that'd be terrific. Thank you. I don't seem to have the ability. Thanks. I started this company in 2001, and the website for that is equitableservicesmdec.com. And I'll talk a little bit about resources that are on that site that are mostly free for you to use as we go on. Before starting a consulting company, I was the education director at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I was there for No Child Left Behind, the very end of that piece of legislation, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and then a little bit after that. So I've been through the whole congressional process of kind of lobbying through the elements of federal education programs as they pertain to the equitable participation of private school students. And prior to that, I was the director of the Office of Non-Public Education at the U.S. Department of Education. And I hope that many of you are familiar with the Office of Non-Public Education. It is currently headed by Maureen Dowling, who I had the pleasure to have on my staff. So she is terrific. And the Office of Non-Public Education is a liaison office that connects private schools and federal programs. And I was there and spanned 3 secretaries of education. So I started with Lamar Alexander, I went all the way through Dick Riley, and then I moved on to Secretary Page. So I've had a lot of experience with federal education programs, both in the development of the language for federal education programs as they pertain to the equitable participation of private school students, and also in the kind of federal role of making sure that the language in the law happens for private school students and their teachers and their families. But in addition, I've been a Catholic school assistant superintendent in charge of government programs, and I've been a Catholic school principal and teacher. So I've also had, most of the time I would say it's the pleasure of actually helping students to receive the benefits from federal education programs. And so with that, let's look at the 2 focus areas that John asked me to talk about today. And the first is to understand the use of third-party providers in federal education programs. I think some of you on the call today are very familiar with third parties, and others may be third what? Like, how does this affect my students getting services? So I just want to talk about how third parties operate in federal education programs. And then I also want to talk a little bit about strategizing how best to use the funds to maximize benefits for your students, because as many of you are familiar, it's not just the new EANS funds, but we've got all kinds of federal education funds out there. Our kids have all kinds of needs, and how do you mesh those 2 together and make sure that you're strategically using those funds in a way that actually benefits your students in a significant way. So let's look at kind of the history and the placement of third-party providers in federal education programs. Now, current federal education programs, not only EANS of what we're talking about today, but the Every Student Succeeds Act. So we have third-party providers in Title I, in Title II Professional Development, Title III English Learners, Title IV Academic Support. We have third-party providers under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The first COVID relief bill, the CARES Act, use of third parties, and again in EANS, use of third parties. So it's something that's actually been in the law since we started with elementary and secondary school federal education programs in 1965. So there's a very long history of the use of third parties. And we call them third because really the first party is the grantee or the subgrantee. So it's the state or it's your public school district. And the second is you. But The third party is somebody that's not the receiver of the services, nor is it the holder of the money, the fiscal control and the program control. It's somebody that comes in to work with both of those groups. So third parties are contracted by whoever is controlling that federal money. So we're not talking about you as a private school contracting with a third party, but instead, if it's Title I, for example, it would be the public school district. If it's EANS, it may be the state. I'll explain in a bit how Indiana is going to do this, but it's that entity that controls the federal dollars. So usually we're talking about the public school district or the state education agency. So your local education agency, your state education agency. And then on behalf of whoever that federal grantee is, the third party is going to provide the services, and they can provide them to public school students, or what is most common is they're providing them to private school students along the same eligibility for program benefits as if the public school district or the state were providing them themselves. So the rules don't change. It is just a mechanism by which services are delivered, hopefully in a more efficient manner, and in a way that works best for private school students. So the public agency is always going to control the funds. They're going to make all the final decisions about how the funds are spent. That agency is going to be accountable to the U.S. Department of Education about how the funds were spent and whether they were spent and whether they are left over and all of those kinds of things. But they operate the program through a third-party provider that is contracted. So there's some kind of written contract agreement that this third party is going to provide services X, Y, and Z. Examples of third parties. If you are a Title I school or a private school that has students participating in the Title I program, you might have your instructional services provided by a third party. And some third parties are national parties, they're national companies. Some are local, some are regional. So being a third party is not defined by your scope, it's really defined by what you can offer in the way of services and benefits. Now, teacher professional development, you could have in your school someone come in through Title IIA, provide professional development, and that person might be a local trainer. That's a third party as well. You may have English learners in your school and you want the parents to fully participate in the student teacher conferences that you are holding. You hire or the district provides a translator through the Title III program. That is a third party provider. The district is backed up in doing child find, and so they hire local psychologists to perform some of the child find tests under IDEA, third party. So those are all examples, and I give you those to show you that this is not new in EANS. It's particularly important, I think, to use third parties in EANS, and I'll explain that to you in a moment, but it's not new. So one of the things that, and I'll show you this in the timeline in a moment, that's important in EANS is that the money needs to be obligated in a very, very short timeline, within 6 months. And any of you who've worked with federal programs before know that 6 months is like the blink of an eye. But that's what Congress decided because it's emergency funding. And obligating money occurs when a contract is signed or when a public employee performs the services. So Indiana has, I think, very wisely gone with hiring a third party. It's a kind of a quasi-public agency. And by hiring that company, and John, you can correct me if I'm not characterizing this correctly, but my point is that by doing this, Indiana is obligating your dollars right away. So Indiana has been very heads up smart about how they're proceeding with EANS. So, but that's not the third party this showcase is about, and I want to make that distinction. So this state administrator will contract with other third party providers who have services and benefits and programs that can meet the needs of your students and your schools as requested when you apply for the EANS funds. Those are the folks you're going to hear from today. And so you don't have to worry in Indiana about the obligation piece of the timeline. You just have to worry, thank goodness, about the services that are going to be available for your students and how you can best work with a third party that is contracted through the Indiana State Education Agency to be sure your students are getting the best bang for the buck on EANS. So before we really talk about getting those kinds of services, let's just take a moment to look at the timeline for EANS. This was passed by Congress and signed into law on December 27th, and the Education Department had to release the applications to the governors to apply for EANS by January 26th. So that's been done. The governors have until February 22nd to apply to the U.S. Department of Education for these EANS funds. And the state then has to publish its application within 30 days of receiving the dollars. And while only a few states have applied so far, the U.S. Department of Education has been almost immediately turning around, approving the application and allowing those dollars to be spent. So this latter part is the important part of the timeline for you, that you can expect Indiana, and I know some of you are state affiliated elsewhere, so in any of your states, to publish those applications around February or March, depending on when that 30 days hits from the state having received the dollars. Once those applications are out, you will be eligible to apply for EANS funds, services, just like every other federal education program. You're not actually getting the dollars, you're getting the services for those dollars. The state has 30 days to give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down on whether your application is approved. So that's going to put you around March or April. Now, as I said, in Indiana itself, those funds will already be obligated. If you're outside of Indiana, they do need to be obligated within 6 months. So we're going to estimate that to be around August. The funds have to be spent by September 30th, 2023. And that really brings us into strategic use of funds, because we've got a long time to spend those funds. And we have actually quite a bit of dollars to be spent. So the first thing to, I think, kind of focus on when we're looking at strategy is that there are CARES dollars. Has your school expended all of those yet? There are title programs, so Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV-A, all under the ESSA program, are all still available. So did you expend all of those dollars last year, and you know for the next school year there's going to be additional funds? So these are things to all keep in perspective. Special education funds are available through IDEA. So all of these program services are out there, and now we're going to layer EANS on top of that. So the services, of course, can be different from what your students may be receiving under the title programs or through IDEA, what you decided in CARES. You don't have to decide the same thing, but you could. So that's the other thing when you're thinking in terms of what do my students need? Do they need more of what they've been getting? Do they need services in a category that you haven't been able to provide for them yet? Do they need services that are like Title I, but for kids that don't qualify for Title I, that are like IDEA, but are for kids that aren't getting IDEA services? These are just the kinds of questions to ask yourself. And additionally, keep in mind that these are emergency funds to respond to the pandemic. So you want to focus on the needs of your students in light of all of the other funding sources and programs through federal education programs that your students may already benefit from, but particularly with the lens of the impact that the pandemic has had on your students. And again, that answer is not going to be the same for everyone. Some schools have been in session nearly the entire time. Some have had hybrid. Some haven't been to school yet. I have a slew of grandchildren, 14 of them, and no one group is the same as the other group of them. So I may have, one set of grandchildren going to school full time. I certainly have one that has not been to school since last March, and everything in between. So your schools are the same way. And so the impact of the pandemic on your schools is going to be different from one to the other. But this is the kind of lens to listen to the presentations today about the kinds of services that the various third parties can provide and how that helps your students, your teachers, your school. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is that what we want to do, and that goes back to that last piece on the timeline, is we want to balance between, I don't know what to spend it on, let's just buy a whole bunch of computers and get it done with. So the kind of hurry up and spend mindset, to the, I don't know, I have till September 2023. I'm in no rush to get anything done. It's emergency funding. And again, you want to put that lens on the ability through the EANS program that you have to affect how your students perform in the future based on the problems that may have occurred during the pandemic. So you definitely want to spend thoughtfully, but expeditiously. So the impact of the pandemic. One of the things we're hearing a lot about is the learning loss. And we really do want to address that if that's occurring for your students. And the more data you have on that, the better. Anytime we can have data-driven decisions as to how to spend funding, the more likely we are to have positive results that we can measure through data. So looking at learning loss, what are some of the questions that you may want to focus on as you're listening to the presentations today? Well, one of the things may be restoring your students to grade level standards. Yes, our students have been progressing, but not nearly as fast if the teacher had been with those children full time in a regular classroom. So restoring our students to grade level standards, ensuring our teachers are well equipped for distance learning, hybrid models, safe in-class teaching, and the back and forth that sometimes occurs. That's the other thing. I've had groups of grandchildren that it's like I have to check every week. You in school, you out of school, you hybrid, you mornings, you afternoons. It's everybody's doing their best, and depending on the location, there's a lot of pandemic COVID data that is changing the way education happens almost on a bi-weekly basis. So ensuring your teachers are well equipped as well can be a really important part of your focus on the EANS program. Another thing is that you could focus on all of your students, and maybe, it's kind of that we're all in the same boat idea and everybody is going to need this assistance. But another thing you can do is to focus on your most impacted students. So you could really cycle out some of your students who need additional help or who need additional focus, or whose teachers need additional skill sets to help them. And then finally, as you're listening to the presenters today, consider extended learning time activities as well. So not just pull out services to your students during the school year, but also things such as summer school, early start to the 21 to 22 school year, or early start for a subgroup of your students, enrichment activities online or in person, and whether that's before school, after school, in the summer, on weekends, in take-home packets, through family involvement activities. There's a lot of different options out there, as you're going to hear in a moment. And when you're thinking strategically about the use of EANS funds, you do want to lay in all the other programs you have, but you do want to focus specifically on the impact of the pandemic on your students, regardless of the impact of the pandemic on other students as well. So I hope that that gives you some idea and kind of a lens to listen to the presenters today and get some ideas for what you would want to put in your application to the state. And John, if we have time for questions, or if you want me to just stick around in case there are questions later.
Michelle, if you're able to stay around, I don't see any questions at this point. Heidi, do we have any questions in the chat at this point? I don't see anything. Um,
Doesn't
and
look
I'm-
like it.
And I'm sure there may be questions as we move through. Thank you, Michelle. Great introduction and a great lens to go into the next component. Is Jeremy on, Heidi?
Yes, he is.
I'm here.
Okay, well, I get the opportunity to welcome Jeremy Beck, and many of you are probably familiar with FACS, and I forget the exact tuition management, but a few years ago, FACS developed a new component of their company called FACS Education Solutions. And Jeremy is a regional vice president for federal programs, and he's been here to Indianapolis and spoke to the INPEA board as one of our business partners. And beyond that, he's a former private school, Catholic school principal. So he understands the seat that you're sitting in, and we're looking forward to hearing what FACS Education Solutions could provide as a third-party provider related to your EANS fund. So Jeremy, take it away.
All right, thank you, John. Heidi, can everybody see my screen?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Hopefully it'll come soon. Try it again.
There we go.
All right. Well, thank you for the intro, John. It's always nice to see everyone on meetings like this, because I know, like John said, the shoes that you're sitting in, the chairs that you're sitting in, the shoes that you're filling, this is a definite crossroads that we have. Unfortunately, the crossroads are not distinguishable. There are a lot of different variations of ways to support our kids. And after listening to Michelle and listening about third parties and what they might do, it's a great opportunity for us to express to you exactly what we do, because I know that talking to a lot of principals, superintendents, and others that are in leadership positions, right now schools just need to know down and dirty, what can I get, and how can a company like FactSed, or like me personally, how can I help them be strategic in the use of those funds? And because of those crossroads being multiple lanes that we have to go down all at one time, it can become an immense burden on all of you. And quite honestly, I am here really to help navigate those. And I want to assist everyone in as best a position, put everybody in the best of position as possible to make a real significant impact with those dollars, and think strategically, be a resource for that effort, and to really put our expertise to work for you. Everything that I do is grounded in this saying, and this is something that I've been very passionate about my whole life. Is even when I was a 20-year Catholic school administrator, I had this up on my wall, and it's something that I like to start out a lot of my presentations with, because it's where all of us as private school leaders come from. We're here, we're not in this for the money by any means. We're not in this for the glory. We're here because we care about kids. We want to support our teachers, and we want to be part of providing the next generation of those of us that are going to be out there taking over for us. What I want to talk about specifically, and dive right into what is FACS Education Solutions. John definitely spoke to the FACS management side of things, and I will touch on that briefly here in a second, because over 12,000 schools are partners with us already on the FACS side. FACS Education Solutions was built at the turn of ESSA coming into law back in 2015. Once third-party providers became allowable under Title I and were explicitly allowed to provide those services under the law, FACS wanted to give back directly to the classroom. So rather than simply providing great software and great tools to get parents to be able to afford and be able to attend private schools, they wanted to get into the business and give back to those schools, those 12,000 plus schools, on directly impacting the classroom, instruction, professional development, and other services. So that mission mindset is really the reason why I'm at FACS now. After being here a couple of years, nothing's changed. What brought me here has kept me here. And that is, we want to provide services for each and every school to the best we can. If it's with us, that is great. If it's us helping them find a source where services can be even better provided, then we will do that, and we'll step out and allow that to move in. The long-standing services we have with a lot of our schools, it's built around great customer service, great partnership, and the ability to help schools really maximize what they're getting from the resources that they have. And that's what we really do on the instructional side as well as the professional development side, with a lot of other pieces and parts underneath those larger umbrellas, which I'll speak to in a minute. We also provide a significant value to schools. That's typically better than a lot of LEAs and a lot of other third-party options, simply because we have been told and we are structured to not be the money makers for the company. And what we do is we live off of very thin margins, really just to pay for the time and energy that it takes to manage the programs. Our margins are significantly less than a lot of others, which has allowed me to really promote and show a lot of schools that we can nearly double the amount of services they're getting for the same dollars in their allocations they're getting from Title, ESSER, and now with EANS. The beautiful thing about EANS, if any of you were on the presentation that we provided last week that was given by our president, Dr. Patrick Hagerty, Pat and I go back a lot of years. He was my diocesan superintendent before he came to FACS to build FACS Education Solutions as the newest member of the family. But he and I go way back, providing services for a lot of the private schools back in Montana. And the reason why he pulled me down to join FACS Ed was because I would travel around the state of Montana working with our Lutheran schools, our Christian schools, our Seventh-day schools, and every private school that we could get access to help them maximize their value of the dollars they were given by the federal government. That work continues today. So we work with a ton of SEAs, LEAs, and other fiscal agents to provide those services, and not a penny ever comes from the school's operations budget. That is often a point of confusion for schools. Unlike our other FACS products, which are paid for by the school itself, this part of FACS never dips into the coffers of the school that provide their day-to-day operational elements. We simply work with the LEAs and the SEAs and other third-party contractors to provide the services on their behalf to the private schools, like Michelle pointed out. We want to help schools impact learning strategically. One of the things that I do routinely is I spend a lot of time working with schools to move them forward and how to think strategically with their title allocations and now with their other federal funds. We want to take the management burden off of you. We want to do that systematically, and we want to do that because we know you have a lot of things going on in your life and you don't have a lot of time and energy to be able to give to this. Our instructional services are very simple. We provide hundreds of teachers across the country, from Hawaii all the way to New York and down into Boston, from coast to coast and out in the islands, providing instructional services directly to students. How do we do that? We actually contract the teachers by utilizing connections that are already sourced from the private schools that we serve. So we actually work with principals of the private school to find the best fit for the teachers, the counselors, the tutors, the custodians, or whoever we're hiring that already knows their schools, and those people already know what they're getting into, what the culture is, what their beliefs are, depending on what type of private school they're going to be working at. We hire the teachers, but really they're our employees, but they're teachers under the guidance of the principal to provide the best services possible to their children. We partner with the schools to do the hiring and the training, but what they get with us is a highly trained teacher in our model, which is a research-based, best practices, blended learning model of instruction that incorporates a software piece that's included along with others. It's a simple process. It's a request of the use of the third party, which then goes to consultation with the principal and I develop a proposal, and we get right into implementation. After that, we provide all the follow-up data. We want to make sure that there is significant growth that's been created by this service. So we circle back all the time and give not only spend down reports to the principals on how much dollars they have left sitting at the LEAs and the other public entities that are holding the money, but we also follow up on how are the services going? Are kids learning? Are teachers getting better at instruction because of our professional development services? So on that note, we provide a ton of professional development. Last year, we did millions of dollars in PD. Unfortunately, a lot of that ended up being virtually. We did over 1,200 different types of custom-built virtual sessions for our schools. That's something that this company was founded on originally, and we've been doing that for years under a different name before Fax Education Solutions. But everything we do is presented by experts in the field. We have tier 1 presenters that are PhD, published authors, have worked at the highest university levels, but also many of our presenters have worked in your shoes or been teachers in your classrooms, and they are experts in the content area that we're presenting PD on. Everything's research-based. We have done, obviously, like I said, thousands of virtual sessions, but our bread and butter really is a blend of both, or doing on-site training, bringing those people to you to deliver it for your school in your environment, and to make sure that we really capture that customization of what your teachers need right now at that very time, that is built strategically into your planning for multiple years to come. So it's a simple process. Again, it's a consultation call with the principal and I. It's building a proposal for you, the private school principal, to review. Once that's signed, just like with instructional services, that goes to the public entity that we're providing the services on their behalf, and goes to my team to get implemented and execute and follow up with data reporting. Our instructional coaching program is relatively new, but it's led by Dr. Susan Abeline. If any of you have had a chance to work with her before, she is unbelievable. She joined our Fax Ed team in June and she took 2 months just to do the research and content building of our instructional coaching program, which is her forte. As the assistant soup, both in Los Angeles and in New York Archdiocese, this was her bread and butter. She was really articulate in how to coach not only teachers, but also administrators. So we have a leadership coaching program, and EANS funds and all of the other impact funds that we want to have put towards instructional progress and closing the learning gap. Coaching is one of those that schools are really climbing onto. It's an easy one. It can be done virtually through our very unique software called Mosaic that looks just like the Huddle software that sports teams use. It's all done through that. That's proprietary because our company actually owns the significant portion of Huddle. So we have access to some pretty cool stuff that really revolutionized the coaching program out there. We also can offer some summer school options. I know, this is something that has really been a push for me across my Midwest states, is I have all these funds and I don't want to just buy stuff. I want to strategically make a difference in my kids' achievement gaps, in the way that my teachers have been unable to be provided professional development outside of just learning how to use Google platforms and different things like that to just deliver virtually the instruction that they needed to do in the last year. Now it's an opportune time to actually get them some PD to progress in their goals professionally. So the one thing that came to mind often, and we already have out, is our summer school program. A lot of schools have already signed up for this, utilizing some of their residual Title I funds, some of the ESSER funding that they still have available, and now it's an option for EANS funds. Really, it's built to close the achievement gap. And that can be done in a couple of different ways. It can be an end-of-the-year program to really capitalize on where the kids leave off and where to try to get them leading into the next school year. Or it can be a Kickstart program in August, and how to get those kids revved up and ready to go, hopefully all back to in-person learning, but really gives them an opportunity to close that gap. It's one of those things where I think summer school is going to be a piece of the puzzle that's going to be very integral in how our schools start up the year next year. And that, what you can expect from us is we have a prepackaged program so that there's a place to start in our conversation of customization. But again, it's really what's best for your kids and what works best for your school logistically, the amount of teachers that you have available. We like nothing better than to hire your teachers and put them into our summer school programs, because that draws kids, that allows more comfortability and less learning that the teacher has to do, because they already know the school. They oftentimes know the kids very well, and they can jump right into the meat of the program, which is making progress academically. So we have a lot of opportunity to custom build what this summer school program needs to be for you. And we can do that in several different ways. We have a packaged program, or we can take that and modify that to fit your needs. There's blended learning throughout. There's STEM options. There's all sorts of different remediation tools. For a couple of schools I'm working with now, we're building in some physical fitness components. There's just a lot to do. Every school, every student, as you can see, I already wrote this down here, but we know and we understand as private school educators, which most of us are in this company, we understand that every environment is a little bit different and unique. And that's what we really capitalize in all of our services. So it's a great opportunity for me to re-say over and over again that whatever your needs are, we're not a custom fit, one size fits all, one pricing fits all. We will work with you to make sure that it's exactly what you need at that time, fits into your plan strategically, but also that you have the funding available to really make that impact work. I work with my leadership all the time with InfactSed to help get schools maximum amounts of service for the dollar amounts. So we hear you loud and clear. We know you need to stretch your dollars, as always, as far as possible. But again, we want to hire your teachers for instructional services during the year, as well as summer school. We hire them, they're our employees, but they're your teachers in your schools teaching your kids. And that's important for us to make sure that you know. With that, I wanted to take just a minute and do something that I think is very important, because it's unbelievable to me how many of you guys have been able to get through this pandemic and these very difficult times with everything going on in our country, and leading and keeping those teachers, providing them resources, keeping the teachers, their social emotional health and all of the concerns that they have with the virus, but really being the glue that keeps this all together on top of the glue that the teachers are providing. And of course, the larger leadership nationally. But thank you for doing what you do. There's a lot of people out there that wouldn't have made it this far. So with that, I wanted to send it back over to John for questions, or Heidi, whoever's doing that. And you have my information up here on the screen. I am the Midwest FactSed Regional Vice President, and that's my email and that's my phone number. Don't be confused by the 406. That's my Montana phone number from years ago. I've just kept it, but that is your direct line to me at any time, because I have principals call me and ask follow-up questions to these types of conversations I have with larger groups. That's probably what I spend half my time doing, is just consulting. That never costs a penny. That's all free. We do that because we want schools to succeed. And again, if you want to go down the road of any of these in more detail, I'm happy to do that at any point with you, starting right after we're done here. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. And again, if you'd like to follow up with Jeremy, there's his email address and his telephone number. There's a couple questions in the chat, but I think they're more general and maybe not specific to facts themselves. It's more of a state-related issue about COVID and credit recovery, whether that would be allowable in summer, Daryl, I think is what your question is, whether that falls under. I would assume that it would, especially if that's, the student's graduation has been impacted by COVID, but those are individual questions that we can share with. Oh, does FACTS do credit recovery? I don't think so. Do you do credit recovery, Jeremy?
We have not in the past. Now, with the flexibility that EANS is providing, that may be an opportunity that the state allows. So that would definitely be something we'd look into if that was desirable. But yeah, not at this point. We don't do credit recovery.
And the superintendent Diocese of Evansville asked you to call him. He had a couple questions, Jeremy. So you got a direct question there. There's another question from Shakir, who is joining us from, I don't know if it's from the Chicago area, but my assumption is, the question is, do you hire teachers to teach full time during the next couple of years? Can you do that? And I would assume so, if it's related to
benefit eligible. If they're benefit eligible at 30 hours a week, they receive our benefits, which are outstanding. So it's really a nice retention tool as well.
I'm going to need to move on to get to the next provider. There's a question about using EANS money to pay a salary of a teacher. You cannot do it at your school, but a third-party provider can do that, Doug, in terms of your question there. So with that said, Jeremy, thank you so much, and we appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next phase, try to keep things moving along. And I think joining us, Heidi, have they entered yet?
They're entering right now.
All right.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
All right, Jeremy, take care, buddy. Thank you. And there's Devin and John, I'm assuming will show up here on screen here soon. Thanks for waiting, Devin and John. We're running just a little bit behind. We pledged to try to keep this moving quickly, but as things go. And we will, and I meant to mention this to Jeremy, Heidi will kind of give you a 5-minute warning on direct message, just so you know, it's from a time perspective. And John, are you on?
I am here. Can you hear me, John?
Oh, there he is. Okay. I'd like to introduce our next business partner to you all. And tell you the truth, this business partner was INPEA's first business partner when we started the business partner program. So we're real pleased that they are still with us. John Ware is the Director of Educational Partnerships. Devin Wibble is the Vice President of Academics at Catapult Learning. And they have been in the third-party provider business for a long time and are serving a number of schools here in the state of Indiana with their third-party provider services. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to John and Devin.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I wanted to just start by thanking you for the opportunity, and also thank you for the work that you do every day across the state of Indiana, teaching kids, and especially for your commitment to providing safe in-person instruction. We really appreciate the work you do. As John mentioned, Devin Weibel, our VP of Academics, is with me today, as is Joy Westorp, who's our Vice President of Operations for the Midwest. So we're super excited to be here. As questions come up, feel free to share those with us. I wanted to just point out something in the chat. We've put a link in here. Part of our goal today would be to initiate some conversations with each of you, particularly in this period of time, this obligation period, as you start to think about how you want to put your funds together. So there's a link in the chat, and if anybody wants to have a follow-on conversation, you can complete your basic information, your name, school, and the best way for us to reach you, and we'll schedule a follow-up visit. So please know that we'd like to continue the conversation. And Devin, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to just say I recognize some names across the board here, and just wanted to say that over the last 18 to 24 months, Catapult, as John referenced, has had the good fortune of partnering with many of your schools to provide Title I instruction programs, some of the programs that Michelle Doyle mentioned earlier. We've been fortunate to partner in delivering direct instruction. We've also provided professional development, data-driven professional development to a group of schools where we've been focusing on some of your learning outcomes and targeting our instruction in the classroom. So we've been grateful to do that. And as we think about this EANS funding that's coming in, I would encourage you all to think about the next 24 months and think boldly about the ways that we can use these funds to address the children that have been affected by the learning loss that we've endured. One of the ways we've been successful is we have experience in the regulatory and funding piece of this third-party provider business. We've been fortunate to work with Indianapolis Public Schools as an LEA in providing a lot of the Title I services that I mentioned. I will tell you all, it's not always the easiest thing navigating through the LEAs to get funding, but that's something that we consider ourselves to be very expert at, and we've been doing it for a while. And as you know, with EANS funding, that relationship is going to be at the state level. So one of the upsides is we'll be dealing directly with the state or the Education Service Center. But our goal would be to partner with you to help you think about, to visualize and strategize how you can use these funds to make the most impact for your students, your families, and your school communities. One of our colleagues, Dr. Ken Porter, who delivers leadership and instructional coaching, calls these WIGs. They're wildly important goals. So I want you to think big, think of your WIGs, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to follow on and talk with you about some of those plans. So I'm going to turn it over to Devin now, and we'll move forward, and look forward to entertaining any questions that you have along the way.
Great, thanks, John. I'm thrilled to be here. As John said, and both John said, my name is Devin Weibel. I'm the head of academics at Catapult. And so I'm just going to share with you, how we have been thinking about really mitigating learning loss and setting your school communities up to accelerate learning, to make sure that your students are able to quickly get back to grade level work and hit those grade level expectations. We recognize fully that we're not only in a health crisis, we are really in an education crisis, and you guys are living that every single day. My hat goes off to you, to the work that you're doing to make sure your kids, your school communities, and your families are supported. And so as we think about a research-based COVID program to really fill those needs, and I echo John's really great statement around thinking big and thinking long-term about how we can support you, support your school community, and really filling the needs for your kids academically and social emotionally. We know your community is a community of learners, both at the student level, your staff, your faculty, but also your families. And so when we think about how we support you and your school communities, when we think about, thinking big, we want to think about how we can do this work, both in the academic side of the work and the mental health side of the work, to really, develop strong mental health so that your kids can succeed academically in the classroom. And that we want to support your families in continuing that work at home so that they feel fully supported. And then really on that professional learning side, to make sure your staff and your faculty are also feeling that support. Because we know when we do this comprehensive work together, that we're going to get the best gains academically out of our students, and they're going to feel the most supported and prepared for life outside of the classroom. We are ready to begin this hard work with your school community right now. We also have plans to carry that work through the summer and then over the next couple of school years as we can. And we can, of course, deliver these services virtually, on site, and even in a hybrid model. And so, as John mentioned, we are actually doing this work in Indiana right now. We are very fortunate. Thank you for that partnership. And we currently support over 100,000 learners and more than 25,000 teachers in this academic component. We do that through direct services with students, really working in literacy and math. We also have an amazing enrichment program that bolsters the work that our kids do in that direct service. They get an opportunity to do more of a project-based learning in that enrichment, where they take the skills they're learning in math and literacy and they put them to action. And so they see them come to life. We can do this work one-to-one, depending on the need of your kids. We can also do this in a small group, up to 4 or so kids, and do that intensive tutoring. We diagnose students using a diagnostic assessment. So this is all based on data-informed work to really make sure we're targeting the needs of your kids and the needs of your school community. We also work in curriculum mapping to really support that work as your teachers get back to school in the fall, to think about what do we need to reteach, where do we need to remediate. But the name of the game right now is we can't lose time. We've got to accelerate learning and make sure that our kids are getting into grade level content so they don't fall further behind. We want to make sure that we close the gap and then we prevent the gap from coming back. We do this also through coaching and PD. We're doing this work right now also in Indiana, really supporting your instructional teams and leadership through data coaching, working to design standards-based content and unit plans, and of course, supporting the needs of all of your learners, whether the needs across the special ed continuum, and really making sure that all of your plans are personalized to meet the needs of your kids. We employ over 5,000 educators. One of the things that has been really successful in Indiana, especially over the summer, is that we are able to train and deploy instructors very quickly. We do the lifting of hiring either your teachers or other teachers. We train, we coach, and we support, and we work with your teams throughout that process and throughout that partnership through constant communication and transparency. What makes us really successful is our evidence-based curriculum. So again, this is we are doing some of this work right now in title intervention. So when we think about the focus of these programs, it's very specific to the needs of our kids. We use data to really create that personalized learning plan in literacy and math. We want to close gaps and prepare our kids to do grade level work. So we're constantly working on the area of need and really helping students transfer that skill and strategy work into grade level work, because we know they can be successful. We're going to leverage their strengths as well. So we look at what our kids are struggling in, but just as important is what our kids can do. And we leverage those strengths to target gaps and accelerate growth. We also talked a little bit about enrichment. Enrichment is a way that we keeps our kids motivated and engaged. We want them to keep coming to our program. We want them to see the passion and love of learning. So through STEM and robotics, as well as virtual field trips, we are able to keep our kids really passionate about the work that they're doing, because they see the learning that they're doing in our tutoring program come to life when they do some of these projects. That's an option. We also make sure we're in constant contact with families. We have progress reports, constant communication, and lots of check-ins to make sure our families are supported. And really, we know that family connection is key to maximizing student progress. We also want our kids to work on age and developmentally appropriate content. So all of our curricula has been designed with our students in mind. We've been, it's research-based, it's evidence-based, and we know that it works and it's successful in making sure that students are able to really grow quickly. I also want to point out, and I see your question, Chuck, and we'll get to it in 1 second, that we do a lot of support in social emotional learning as well, that we have designed a program around the CASEL key competencies, these 5 key competencies that we know really support learners in being strong in the academic component of their work, but it also helps build life skills that our kids need to be successful. We do this through counseling and social work, and we're already starting to engage in some of these conversations right now in Indiana to set up these programs. This is also something that we do to foster and strengthen that relationship with our families. We know that just as important as that academic side is making sure our kids are supported, because they're going to learn best when they feel safe. They're going to learn best when they're supported in their mental health. We also provide great PD and coaching in social emotional learning, as well as cultural competence and DEI. So quickly, I just want to give it kind of quick look at one of the ways we can support your schools. We've actually done summer programs in Indiana before, and this is a great way to really bridge your learning into the next school year through a really comprehensive summer program that we help set up. It's a very turnkey program. We provide the curriculum, we hire, train, and coach teachers, and we have lots of different components that we can mix and match to really fit the needs of your school community. Anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day or 2 to 6 weeks. We want to make sure that we're targeting the areas that your kids need so that when they get back to school, they're going to be successful and ready to come back to the fall, closing those gaps and ready to accelerate into grade level work. And Chuck, that's a great question. So what would be a normal amount of time commitment for training? It really depends on the program in which we are setting up. So for a summer program like this, we normally do virtual training, anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on the different components that you choose for this program. And then for our tutoring programs, again, it depends a little bit on whether it's reading or math. So we personalize that training to fit into kind of the program design that we have. This is a great opportunity. I know we have, a comprehensive suite of programs designed to really support your school community and really recover from the crisis that we are facing in education as we come back and recover from COVID. So across this, we really are able to support your school community academically and social emotionally. And across those 3 different groups, your students, your families, and of course, your educators and staff.
Thank you, Devin. And
so John, I'll let you kind of close up because I know we only have a couple minutes left.
We do. I saw Heidi's note, and if there were any questions, we wanted to leave a minute or two. But as I look at this graphic, which Catapult's just recently put together, there are 3 things that stick out to me. So at kind of the 9 o'clock area on the dial, you'll see targeted intervention and tutoring. That's what we're doing in 8 schools in Indianapolis right now, and there's federally funded through Title I, and that's where we help negotiate and navigate through the LEAs. But we just think there are going to be so many kiddos coming out of this that are going to need that additional academic support. And the beauty with the EANS funding is you can put together a program that can run all through next year for anybody who has an academic need, regardless of whether or not they're low-income kids and they're Title I eligible. So the targeted intervention and tutoring is something we do quite a bit of. Across at the 3 o'clock range, the counseling that Devin alluded to, we're in conversations right now. I think counselors are going to be more important than ever going forward, and developing that strong family connection support is going to be vital to kids that are coming out of this difficult time with lots of social and emotional issues. And then the professional development and coaching, just continuing to double down on your staff and feeding them with the strong professional development they need. If it's around SEL, or it could be differentiated instruction, or teaching across modalities, popping in and out of hybrid and in person, we would welcome the opportunity to develop plans and support you all. So I don't know, John or Heidi, if there is an opportunity here for folks to ask any additional questions, but as we mentioned at the outset, we would welcome the chance to continue the conversation with you. You can reach out to me directly, or you can complete that brief survey link and we'll follow up with you as well. And you know, this next 3 to 6 months is really a period of time for you all to be thinking about how you wish to use those funds. And we hope we'll be a part of that conversation with you. And again, thank you for this opportunity, John and Heidi. We welcome it very much and value our partnership with your organization.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Devin. Greatly appreciate it. Great information, and appreciate the link that you put into the chat. And what we've asked all the business partners to do is to come up with a way to further connect with folks if you want to explore partnering with any of these particular business partners for third-party provider services. So, John and Devin, thank you. I didn't see any additional questions. We've tried to limit the questions to chat just because we have so many people on the call, and don't see anything now. Hopefully, if they have other specific questions for you at Catapult, they can email you there. It's your email address that's on the screen. But thanks again. Appreciate not only your participation today, but your partnership with INPEA.
Thank you all. Look forward to staying in touch.
Great, thanks, John.
All right, and we're going to move to the next segment. And I'm not even sure who all these people are. Last time I talked to Andrew, it was Andrew. So we've got lots of folks here from Crossroads, which is great. One of our newest business partners here at INPEA is an organization, a local organization, which is Crossroads Education. And I think they're going to bring a little novel discussion to the whole third-party provider. At least through my lens, they may not be the traditional third-party provider, but I think bring something to that conversation in terms of the novel things that Crossroads Education is doing. And I don't know whether I'm turning over, because even I'm seeing Kevin's screen, but it's not Kevin's face on the screen. So Andrew, I'm assuming I'm going to turn it over to you. And if there are others from Crossroads, you'll introduce them as well.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody, all of you. So I'm Andrew Salmon. I'm the CFO at Crossroads. I'll quickly introduce, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll do some quick introductions. Kevin, our CEO, is here. Kevin, you want to raise your hand? Hey, guys. That's Kevin Burkopes. Nick Williams, our Chief Revenue Officer, is on the phone with us. And then Nick Wall, our Chief Operating Officer. So we have a team of subject matter experts. We have experience in Nick brings a lot of experience. Nick Wall, that is, brings a lot of experience on the senior administration from schools. So we're excited to present today. So John, if it's appropriate, I can share my screen, and I think we have about 15 minutes to try to just run through the information and talk about how we're applicable. What would you?
That's yep, and you should have co-host abilities to share your screen, Andrew or Kevin. And feel free to do that. You have around 15 minutes and then time for Q&A, although we're asking folks to put their Q&A in the chat session, which Heidi is monitoring, and she'll kind of help keep us on time as well. But we'll turn it over to you. And then as questions come up through chat, Heidi will bring those to your attention.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so yes, hello everybody. We're Crossroads Education. We're a company based out of headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. We work with school partners across the state of Indiana, chartered, public, and private. So we're a locally homegrown company. Very excited to present our blended learning solution that we think is very applicable for the EANS funding that you're discussing today. So quickly, at a high level, so Crossroads Education is a Title I qualified vendor in Indiana and has developed an innovative solution which we call XR Math to focus on math learning loss and standards-based recovery. XR Math is a data-driven solution that leverages the power of tutoring and blended learning activities to equip schools with an effective vendor-provided solution for in-person, hybrid, and distance learning. And so the key point there is that it's a vendor-provided solution, meaning that our school clients that we currently work with, anywhere from Gary to Grant County to Indianapolis to Southern Indiana, we're actually delivering the instruction and providing the instruction in the school and virtually. So when we say vendor-provided solution, it's not necessarily a professional development where we come in and work with all your teachers and educators. We provide the instruction in class and virtually. It's data driven, so individual student data is collected to determine the learning gaps, and we use that data to remediate specific standards, which provides a strategic path for restoring students to grade level standards. These data sets also allow us to prioritize the students that are most impacted, especially by COVID. So we can actually make sure that we're putting adequate resources towards the right students at the right time based on their need. Like I said, it's currently active throughout Indiana. It's available now. It's available for during and after school. It's also available for summer school. So we're really operating this year round to schools across Indiana. So when it comes to EANS funding, there's three specific uses that we've identified that qualify. So there's the educational technology piece. So we do a lot of virtual collaboration. So we have virtual tools that we bring as part of the program. There's an adaptive curriculum, which is a very data-driven adaptive curriculum that we use to diagnose gaps in standards. And so we really see the educational technology being a qualified use of our program. Initiating and maintaining education support services, assistance for remote or hybrid learning, or addressing learning loss. We really think we fit with all of these because we are bringing that assistance to the schools and we're addressing learning loss. And we also are able to provide longitudinal data throughout the year showing levels of mastery as students are growing in mathematics. And then the third one is redeveloping instructional plans for remote and hybrid learning to address learning loss. These are, it goes in the same category of we are providing an instructional delivery for hybrid and remote learning. So we're addressing those needs as well. So the model operates in a few different contexts. So we can, with our school clients right now, we're operating it for core instruction. So we have clients that maybe they have teacher vacancies. We're able to hire licensed coaches, which are our teachers. We call them coaches. They work for us in the classroom and they deliver the core instruction. That's in person and virtual. We have programs that are focused purely on remediation, just addressing students' gaps and standards and bringing them to grade level. I think that's probably more the context we're talking about here today. We have an acceleration program where we just focus on challenging students who maybe need a higher level of mathematics because they're advanced. And then another way that clients are using our program is virtual strategic tutoring. And that's a purely virtual model where we're doing we're doing a lot of diagnostics, collecting a lot of data, and just remediating those specific standards and bringing students to grade level. So I think we have a little bit of time to just run through at a very high level the model and how the model works. But this page right here has our contact information. So I'll run through the model just at a high level. And if you're interested, I'd just like to invite everybody to reach out to Nick Williams by email and just provide us a little context, a little information about your school. We've identified what some of the information that we would need to most effectively have a conversation with you. But we can also go into more detail on the model in that follow-up conversation. So John, how am I looking on time to just be able to run through at a high level of how the model works?
I think you're okay, right, Heidi? I'm leaving timing down.
I just sent the 5-minute warning to you.
So you got
Okay.
that's fine. Keep going, because then you have other time for Q&A if there's questions.
Gotcha. And the one thing I did mention, so when it comes to the EANS funding, we see the process is somewhat similar to how we work with our school clients who use Title I or other forms of title. We would just work with the schools directly to put together a budget and then get it qualified by whoever's administrating, who's ever doing the administrative activities around the sources of funds. So that's a conversation we can have independently with any interested school. Okay. So I got 5 minutes, so I'll just go through this quickly. So a lot of our clients that work with us right now, they're really trying to answer 4 main questions. Sometimes we're just trying to answer one of these, but there's 4 that are consistent. Some schools are asking, how do we keep our math positions filled with a quality educator? Maybe they have historic teaching vacancies in math, or they don't have quality instruction. Number 2 is how do we provide a strategic and data-driven remediation program for our students that are behind in math? Number 3 is how do we serve and challenge our most advanced students with higher level mathematics? Or number 4 is how do we just keep up with innovation? Obviously times are changing with COVID. How do we keep our math department innovating and stay competitive in education? So these are really the 4 main, this is what we see most of the time, schools who come to us looking for a solution. So if you have any one of these, then XR Math may be a potential solution. All right, so what we're trying to do at Crossroads Education is we're trying to provide students a personalized learning experience to be able to provide them what they need, when they need it, and how they need it. And the solution we've developed to do that is through blended learning. So we provide a turnkey blended learning solution that is data-driven and uses a team approach to instruction with a heavy emphasis on teacher-student relationships. So blended learning, data-driven, team approach, teacher-student relationships. Those are really the 4 key things we're after. And the long-term goal of XR Math is to build a community of lifelong learners. Okay. And so we have a certain value set built into XR Math. We take a whole student approach to teaching with a strong belief that students need their social, cognitive, and emotional developmental needs met in order to succeed in school. I won't go through all these core values, but these are the main categories. So there's academic hope. So teaching things like growth mindset, don't give up, how to be joyful when learning, learning how to learn. So study habits, test taking, how and when to ask questions. We find a lot of students just don't know how to ask a question or when to ask a question to get the help they need. Life readiness and well-being. I think I'm getting a notification here. So life readiness and well-being, confidence, self-advocacy, college and career goals. We want to know what students are interested in because that helps us engage with them. And then community of learners. We want students to be able to, now that they've learned how to teach themselves and learn content, how do they help others in the classroom? How do they collaborate with peers? So these are the value sets that in everything we do, we look to reinforce. We mentioned blended learning. That's our approach to instruction. It's virtual and in-person activities. All of our program typically has an element of both of these, but we define blended learning through 6 main activities. So virtual tutoring, large group instruction, adaptive curriculum, adult mentorship, small group instruction, and peer-to-peer. So at any time in our program, students will be scheduled into these various activities. And the idea is that we want to expose students to activities where they're put in a position to learn best based on their needs. So we actually have virtual tutors working with school students in class. We have an instructor on site in the classroom facilitating these activities. So team effort. So this is who does the instruction. We see the role of an educator as several people as part of a team. So there's typically an on-site individual, unless we're doing a virtual only model. There's an on-site coach. There is a virtual team of content experts who provide tutoring to the students. And then there's a back office team that is including management that reports to the client. There's a data team, there's technology support, and there's a curriculum professional. And this is a team that we bring to every single classroom, either in person or virtually. Data-driven, all our decisions are strategically based on available data. Here's some of the data sets that we collect. So we look at curriculum levels of mastery, career interest and engagement, student activity engagement, formative assessments, and then we use teacher training modules to make sure that we're providing our coaches the training they need to be successful in any unique environment. Every classroom is unique, so we want to make sure we're getting our coaches what they need to be successful.
We got about a minute.
Hey, Andrew, there's a question. Keely asked a question about diagnostic. And do you have a diagnostic that you use to determine who needs remediation, or do you ask the school to do that?
Kevin answered that in the chat, John.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought he answered the other question. I'm sorry.
I've been answering the questions in the chat while Andrew's talking, just so that we have kind of a dual approach. But our assessments are based in our curriculum, math space, which Andrew has on the screen. That diagnostic approach has the ability to provide, intermittent longitudinal assessment so that we can continue to check both for decay, but also for gaps in their understandings, dating back to the third grade concepts, all the way through, high school calculus.
And the way we use that is, so we do it's a 10-minute assessment every week, and just tracks, like Kevin said, going back to third grade to see specific gaps and standards. And so each day in class, we're connecting students with virtual tutors who have access to that data. And so when we're discussing a lesson plan today, we're able to look and see what gaps and standards are there that correlate to today's lesson. And the virtual tutors are able to address those specific standards that may be getting in the way of the students' comprehension.
Are there other questions for Andrew or for Kevin? And Andrew, can you bring the slide back up that has your contact information if folks want to follow up?
Yes.
There it is. Heidi, you seen any other chat questions?
Nope, I think Kevin answered them pretty well. Thank you.
Kevin was a step ahead of me, as usual. Well, thank you, Kevin, Andrew, everybody at Crossroads Education. I appreciate you bringing, and like I said, I think your approach is not exactly the same as some of the other more traditional third-party providers. So I think it was great to have you as a part of this conversation. And we'll have folks be reaching out to you, but I want to go ahead and be respectful of folks' time to see if there's any general questions that folks have. Michelle Doyle, I think, may still be on the call if folks have any other general questions. And I do want to say that, we appreciate FACTS and Catapult and Crossroads, their business partnership, as well as being a part of this showcase. Hopefully we've given you some thought, food for thought about how to plan for your EANS funds. And this probably won't be the last time we gather folks. If you're interested, there's been some conversation about having one of our Zoom networking calls for school leaders to kind of talk about, what they're doing in terms of their planning. I know a number of our jurisdictions are even keeping a Google sheet kind of tracking the different ideas that different schools are using. We're not real used to in non-public schools to have access to $81 million, and those grants range from $10,000 up to over $1 million for some of our schools. So Shakir asked, you do mainly math, and I know math is one of your strong points, Kevin, but there's other things that you're involved with as well, right?
Yeah, we have mathematics is the most ubiquitous programming throughout Indiana, but we have a computer science offering and a reading ELA offering as well.
And John, did you see Mary's question? Is there a list of third-party providers who the state has approved or qualified? And is this even necessary with the EANS funds?
There will be for anyone to be a third-party provider participating in EANS, they're going to have to be an Indiana vendor. And I think as Crossroads put in their presentation, they are an approved Title I vendor. They're going to have to be a vendor with a vendor number. And there's going to be a registration process for any third-party provider that wants to participate. Once those third-party providers, Mary, are in the system, then I think schools will be able to search, the portal to find third-party providers that are available in the state that want to participate in this program. And there's a question here, and I don't know if Andrew's still on. I tried to message him.
Andrew had to step out at 12:45.
But Tony had asked a question about faith-based schools and hiring, and I don't know whether Crossroads wants to jump in here, but Andrew had clarified in the chat, which is very true, that all services coming from federal programs have to be secular in nature. Many third-party providers, not all, but many third-party providers will give that school input into the hiring of anyone that they will be using in your school. So if you're just talking about looking at the person in terms of, are they the right fit for your school? Many third-party providers will give the school input into that hiring. And many third-party providers, again, not all, may hire your staff to do off hours kinds of things. To hire your staff to help with summer school programs, or hire your staff to do after school kinds of tutoring. And that's contingent, again, upon the third party provider.
And then one more from John Weber. John,
I thought that's the one I just answered.
At the end, when it comes to the application, will the application be all or none in terms of accepting a submission, or will the state go through applications line by line?
I don't know the answer to that, John. I'm guessing it's going to be I'm assuming mostly it's going to be all or none, but it's going to have to be all allowable uses. I mean, if somebody comes up with something it's not one of the 12 allowable uses, I'm sure that they would follow up with the school about, I don't think people would be completely ruled out because of that, but they would clarify that those aren't acceptable expenditures through the EANS funds. And in terms of the application, I would encourage folks, in my last conversation with Andrew, it sounds like the Indiana application is going to be very similar to the sample application that was put out by the U.S. Department of Education with their guidance on EANS. And so if you want to kind of get started and think through the questions that may be asked, I encourage you to look at that sample application. We can send that out in an update, or Heidi can send that out with the recording of the PowerPoint and the PowerPoints as well. I'm seeing new messages come up, Heidi. And Michelle, if you want to jump into here, feel free.
Josh Summerera is asking for the link to that application that you just talked about, John.
Yes. And
we can send that out in the follow-up with the recording.
Yeah, we'll send it up. I can put it in the chat, but I'd have to go find it, Josh. But yeah, we'll put it out in the follow-up. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? All right, folks, thank you very much. Good luck with your efforts. Feel free to reach out and let us know how we can help you. Hopefully this was valuable for you. And we look forward to continuing to work with you as you work with your students in serving them through these EANS funds. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate it. Take care of everybody.